My friends at NARAL asked me to tell you what it was like before Roe versus Wade. No one asked me to tell you what it was like during Roe versus Wade. I decided I should tell you what it's like after Roe versus Wade. They asked me to tell you what it was like to be 20 and pregnant in 1950, and when you tell your boyfriend you're pregnant, he tells you about a friend of his in the army whose girl told him she was pregnant, so he got all his buddies to come and say, "We all fucked her, so who knows who the father is," and he laughs at the good joke. I want to tell you what it was like to be 8 and be at school in 2007 and play house and have the boys play father and brother and son and the girls play mom and family dog. I want to tell you what it's like to be 21 and in college in 2022 and the last thin lining was shed. You call your doctor to get as many months of birth control as you possibly can, and you call your friends and compare the best off-brand plan B and decide if you want to get more pills at a lower price and how much risk you're willing to take. They asked me to tell you what it was like to be a pregnant girl. We weren't women then. A pregnant college girl who, if her college found out she was pregnant, would expel her there and then without plea or recourse. I want to tell you what it was like to be a child at a Christian middle school and not have a homecoming dance because that could encourage romantic engagements, and measure my hymns because the skirt I was required to wear would be distracting if it were an inch shorter. What it was like for my education to come second to my utility and be told that I can't wear a sweatshirt because no one would know if I was pregnant or not. It would be 2 years until I got my first period. I want to tell you what it's like to have old friends and new friends and acquaintances and know that each of them have a story, that we've shared a story. What it's like to meet someone who doesn't have a story and then stay friends with her long enough until she does. What it was like if you were planning to go to graduate school and get a degree and earn a living so you could support yourself and do the work you loved. What it was like to be a senior at Radcliffe and pregnant, and if you bore this child which the law demanded you bear and would then call unlawful, illegitimate, this child whose father denied it, this child which would take from you your capacity to support yourself and do the work you knew it was your gift and your responsibility to do. What was it like? I want to tell you what it was like when I realized my matriarchs were continuing to fight, when I realized there was more to fight for. What it was like when my mothers won back our bodies and it was time to win court cases. I want to tell you what it was like to be told not to ruin anyone else's life by revealing their own actions, to ruin your own life instead with stifled trauma and no accessible health care and mental health stigma and flat-out disbelief. With no parasite leeching your life force, but a body that still feels stolen. I want to tell you what it's like to go back to your alma mater for a football game and have a White Claw and then freeze when a friend of a friend has their hands on your ass and your first thought is, at least this is it. At least I'm one of the lucky ones. What it's like to sit down with your friend group and explain why you couldn't say anything in the moment. Have to explain why you didn't move, why you didn't ask for help, why you just took it. What it's like to come up with a code word for future nights out, just in case. I can hardly imagine what it's like to live as a woman under fundamentalist Islamic law. I can hardly remember now, 54 years later, what it was like to live under fundamentalist Christian law. Thanks to Roe versus Wade, none of us in America has lived in that place for half a lifetime. I couldn't imagine, 40 years ago, that it was worse than this. Thanks to Roe versus Wade, some of us in America had lived without fear of pregnancy our entire lives. I can hardly believe 3 years ago that they spat in the face of my mother, my grandmothers. I can hardly believe that we are once again living under fundamentalist Christian law. Thanks to Roe versus Wade, all of us in America know the status of women. But I can tell you what it is like for me right now. It's like this. If I had dropped out of college, thrown away my education, depended on my parents through the pregnancy, birth, and infancy till I could get some kind of work and gain some kind of independence for myself and the child, if I had done all that, which is what the anti-abortion people want me to have done, I would have born a child for them. For the anti-abortion people, the authorities, the theorists, the fundamentalists. I would have born a child for them. Their child. I can tell you what it was like for me then. It was like this. I was told to be careful, to protect my purity, to protect my future, because no one else would protect it for me. I was told I was born into sin and everything my body did was evil, and the only redeeming quality is that it might one day create his progeny. There was one time my mom showed me how to line up my keys between my knuckles when I made a fist, and before I went to college, my dad gave me a hot pink pepper spray keychain because despite what they told me, monsters are real. I can tell you what it is like for me right now. It's like this. I try and be fair and even-handed and really careful with my words, using person and human despite the eye rolls. I advocate for men's mental health and healthy masculinity and realize that women are still doing the work for them. The safe spaces we've created have become another thing for them to penetrate without our consent. I try to be nuanced and complex in my understanding of gender and sex and balance 3 generations of anger with patience, and am still handed the male loneliness epidemic, falling birth rates, declining church numbers. Whose fault is that? Whose job is it to fix? Because I'd like to tell them you can't cure a prick, you can't rebuild a house of cards, you can't revive a dead god. But I would not have borne my own first child, or second child, or third child. My children. I did not want children. 1, or 2, or 3. I wanted myself. I might have wanted children. 1, or 2, or 2.5. The life of that fetus would have aborted 3 other fetuses, or children, or lives, or whatever you choose to call them. My children. The 3 I bore. The 3 wanted children. The 3 I had with my husband, whom if I had not aborted the unwanted one, I would never have met and married, because he would have been a Fulbright student going to France on the Queen Mary in 1953, but I would not have been a Fulbright student going to France on the Queen Mary in 1953. I would have been an unwed mother of a 3-year-old in California without work, with half an education, living off her parents, not marriageable, contributing nothing to her community but another mouth to feed. Another useless woman. The life of any fetus would have aborted an acting career, getting my master's, writing a book, whatever dream I had, my dreams, the ones I dared to dream, the ones I dreamed all on my own. I might have been an unwed woman with only herself to look after, creating her own work, never marrying, contributing her ambition to her community, another woman making her own way. There's a world where I'm one of those crafty moms that home makes birthday decorations, where I put my kids to sleep and then work at my writing, where I give my parents grandkids and see our traditions become our traditions. I could have been a wife, mom, and business owner. I could still sacrifice the dream of my future that I have now, but I still have a little girl to take care of. And her dreams, her life, would be prevented by, would be aborted by, the life of another fetus or child or life, whatever you choose to call them. My children, the unwanted ones, the ones I'm supposed to want. I could be a beautiful and lovely wife and mother of 3 in Texas, living side by side with my husband, with a full education, contributing to my community its own future. The very best of women. But it is the children I have to come back to. My children, Elizabeth, Caroline, Theodore, my joy, my pride, my loves. If I had not broken the law and aborted that life nobody wanted, they would have been aborted by a cruel, bigoted, and senseless law. They would never have been born. This thought I cannot bear. I beg you to see what it is that we must save, and not to let the bigots and misogynists take it away from us again. It is the children I have to come back to. Your children. Your obligation, your duty, your worth. If I had broken my law and created life that aborted my future, I would never have been born. I beg you to see what it is that we must save, and not to let the bigots and misogynists take it away from us. It is the children I have to come back to. My child, Reese. My joy, my pride, my last love, I will break every law and abort every future so that she can be born. I beg you to see what it is that we have lost and not to let the bigots and misogynists keep it away from us. Save what we have won. Our children. Hold on to what we fought for. Our future. Save what we have lost. Your child. You who are young. Before it's too late. Save your children. I am still young, but I fear it is too late. Save your dream. You who is timeless. It is never too late. Save yourself.